Hey everyone, it's Chad here from the Teach Better team, and I am here with our amazing moderator of Mastery Chat tonight, Erin Healy. Erin, how are you?
I'm doing great. That was a fantastic chat. I feel like the hour flew by, but it was awesome. Thank you guys again so much for jumping on.
Yeah, absolutely. We loved having you, and we've known you for a little bit. I actually met you as Erin Hall. You've recently been married, so congratulations.
Thank you.
But you also do a lot of other amazing things. So introduce yourself a little bit to the audience.
Yeah, so I'm a fifth year teacher in Rhode Island, and 2.5, 3-ish years ago, I founded the Young Educators Society. We are a networking and professional development community based in kind of in Rhode Island, but we're looking to expand out to meet other awesome new educators, especially in
Yeah.
this dynamic culture that we're experiencing. It's good for everyone to feel connected to somebody and less isolated and home distance learning type of scenarios. So yeah, we do social networking opportunities, professional development. We've got a pretty active blog, webinars and stuff, and we're just getting teachers excited about staying in our profession.
Absolutely. And that's more important now than ever, right? I've had the opportunity to work with YesRI, and it is a fantastic organization. I love that we got to collaborate with the organization as well on the Teach Better team. So we love anytime we can get together and spread that message. And speaking of like helping new teachers, one of the things I loved about today's chat, which was about beginning better, was this idea that this has got to be really hard for new teachers because there are still first year teachers this year, which is sort of amazing to think about, right? But also this idea, or sometimes I would call it a misconception that, well, the feeling's not a misconception. There is this feeling that a lot of teachers have that this is their first year all over again because so many things are different. What was your inspiration for the chat tonight?
So, thinking about that phrase that was thrown around a lot, especially over the summer, like everyone feels like a new teacher all over again. I was trying to figure out what are those emotions, what are those reactions that people connect with a pandemic and distance teaching, hybrid teaching, and being a first year teacher, and why do first year teachers have to go through an experience like this that we're all living in right now? Why does that have to be the start of their careers? Why can't it be, I feel a little bit more like you're in the groove. You come out of college, you come out of a 4 or 5 year education preparatory program. You should feel a little bit more balanced, a little bit more stable. And some of the things that people were talking about tonight that really stood out was that feeling of like a loss of control or a unsteady footing in the classroom when typically the practices that you would go to, the ones that are in your toolbox, those regular activities you bring out every year, those can't work now. And new teachers again are they're flying by the seat of their pants. They're always just kind of adapting and moving and changing as the years go on. And for a teacher to be fortunate enough to start off their career in the same school that they're teaching in 5 years later is really rare too. So it's not even like a first year teacher experience. It's like a first 5 year almost experience in education.
Yeah.
So just trying to think of like, how did the experience and what can we learn from this experience to go back and impact that transition from education preparation to the actual classroom. So we don't have every single teacher entering this profession with those experiences, with those emotions, and maybe they'll be able to stay in the classroom and last a little bit longer and better prepare their students for crazy situations like this one.
Yeah, I really love this idea, right? This sort of mission that you're kind of putting out there into the world, in that like the first year teacher is like this caricature that we all have in our heads of like super overwhelmed and stressed, and you don't know what you're doing and you're just flying by that seat of your pants. And I love this charge right now. I love what you just said. Like we want to change that narrative. Like, why does it have to be that just because I'm a first year teacher means that I'm not as good, or I'm and I'm just so stressed and this is such a horrible experience, so much so that it's what we compare teaching in a global pandemic. like um Which is right. This is absolutely crazy. And I actually have this quite near and dear to my heart. I actually joined teaching. A lot of people might not know this about me. Actually, I had the honor and the privilege of joining teaching via a fellowship, which had me switch careers. But part of the fellowship was an entire year of essentially student teaching. So I got my master's degree, and during a master's degree, I had an entire year. That means day one to the last day of the school year with a mentor teacher. And so I remember starting my first year, and it felt like my second year. And I remember I was able to take on leadership positions. I was able to have confidence in the classroom. I was able to do so many things. So people would go, "Are you sure you're a first year teacher?" And I said, "What do you mean?" Like, it was no different to me. But I loved the idea. But I think there are solutions out there, right, in terms of teacher preparation so we can change this model. I think getting them in the classroom sooner. I think increasing the length of student teaching and things like that. And there are some colleges kind of looking into these things. But even now, if you think, so many schools, I talk to schools all the time. Um, how many opportunities are there right now with teacher shortages where we could utilize teachers in training as classroom aides, as help, as support in actual schools doing actual learning and actual work? Because I think you'd agree, Aaron, that most teachers do most of their learning in the first year they have their classroom. Like, that's when you're honing your craft. So why can't that happen sooner?
Yeah, and I know Rhode Island's in like our state, anyways, in a really big shift to try and increase hours in the classroom in college programs, and so they've increased the hours that you're student teaching. But what I've seen is that that's really been a disincentive for people to come into the profession, because then they're saying, I can't afford an extra semester of college. I can't afford to do this really hard job and like pay to do it. So like, in addition to,
True.
it's a great thing to get all these hours in, but how can we make it so it's affordable and it's tenable for our student teachers? But I absolutely agree. Like, having that one-to-one mentor, ideally, your university professor coming in, shadowing you, having your student teacher mentor, keeping an eye on your classroom techniques and learning in that environment, it was incredibly helpful. And if we can do that for longer and make it accessible, I think that would be a win.
Yeah, absolutely. I think there are models out there that can be used for sure. One of the other questions I really liked is planning in 2020. Now, Aaron, I love instructional planning. That's kind of my jam, especially with things like mastery learning and the grid method. I've been inundated with emails, texts, and calls about, like, teachers being so glad that they had grids that they were working on while they were switching from hybrid to remote to in person. But let's pretend, I'm going to assume that, like, if you're doing the grid method right now, cool, you're set. You might feel okay about this long-term planning. If I've never heard of the grid method, and you don't know who I am, or you've never heard of anything like that, what are some other practical things you think teachers can lean on right now? I have some, but I want to hear your thoughts. That not necessarily the grid. I don't want to go there, but what are some other things they can do to kind of get through this crazy time in terms of planning smarter rather than harder, so to speak?
Yeah, so I thought it was really ironic timing to have that question in the chat pop up on the same day. I know Jeff's class is just dropping on time management, so it's like, oh, this is a perfect topic. But something
Yeah.
that was brought up in the chat a lot was the idea that, like, there are no long-term goals, and set attainable short-term goals. And the way I that to set the next lesson as opposed to next month's would be to plan for the worst case scenario. This is something that I was
Yes.
doing in the spring, which was just like, if the worst case scenario is 100% distance learning, I should be teaching in a way that can be continued in distance learning. That way, if the school goes to hybrid or if it goes in person, and right now we're 100% in-person learners with about 15% of our population doing at-home learning
Wow.
for like quarter 1, and they can come back in quarter 2 if they choose to, but we're all back.
Sure.
But I'm still teaching as if, like, I'm teaching to those distance learners, even though it's about 6 kids per class. I'm still teaching to them with the students in front of me, because if at any moment we're sent home for 2 weeks, their learning is not going to get disrupted at all. And then the time
Right.
you have with the students, whether it's on a Zoom call or whether it's in person, I'm doing more of the SEL relationship building stuff, because that's the time that you can't get
Yeah,
in distance, in 100%
true.
distance learning. Just take advantage of all of that now, and no matter what happens, the learning is still going to be here. If we get this, great. But if you can't, then just always plan for the worst case scenario.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that you just said that. Plan for the most restrictive learning environment always, right? This is something I've been preaching to administrators and teachers across the country over the last few months. I go, listen, you can't make 3 separate plans for 3 separate scenarios. You need to make one plan with the most restriction in mind. And guess what? 99.9% of those plans will work beautifully in a normal classroom. They will. They'll work because the kids are right there. You can add some sprinkles onto it if you want while they're in the classroom. Like that's cool, but it'll still work if they have to go remote. So you always have to plan for that most restrictive environment. I absolutely love that. That if you were going to take one note from tonight's chat or from listening to Aaron, plan for the worst case scenario so that you don't get stuck with plans for the best case scenario and nothing to do. Absolutely. So Eric Guys wants you to clarify, and I believe I heard you say it, but let's repeat it just so he has it. He says, are you simultaneous hybrid, which means you're teaching home and in person at the same time?
Yes. So for that small percentage of my students, they are doing synchronous-ish learning. In my particular
Got
class,
it.
I have them start off on Zoom. I also, if they can't hop onto Zoom at that point, I've recorded all of my direct instruction. And then the majority of our 80-minute blocks is asynchronous learning. And so that way, again, relationship building can happen. And the students who, have other home responsibilities and are learning at home but can't get into the class in that 15, 20-minute window still have an opportunity to keep up with the class.
Absolutely. Thank you for clarifying that. I just wanted to make sure he got his question answered. So, love the focus on planning for the worst case scenario. Asynchronous learning is something that's near and dear to my heart, as you know. Letting students work at their own pace in a mastery-based setting, right? That's the core of the grid method and everything we do here. And it really, really does. It really can help, right? Because then you're giving students a little bit more freedom. So if they need the help, they're there, they're getting it. But if they can keep on chugging along on their own and they don't need that 15 minutes with you or that 20 minutes with you, great. They can go. You're giving them that freedom. That's absolutely fantastic. That's absolutely fantastic. So what do you think? Did anything surprise you tonight from the chat? Is there anything where you kind of caught you off guard at all, or that you were really excited about after now that you're reflecting on it?
I was really glad how people were being so open and authentic in the chat. There were a bunch of people who hopped in and were like, honestly, I'm just really struggling with this and could use some advice. And just to see people saying,
Yeah,
I'm going to make myself vulnerable in this situation on Twitter is really, really powerful. And it helped build that community that was one of the questions. How
yeah.
are you continuing to build communities? It's by
There you go.
being vulnerable in everything you do. And I was not sure how that would go, but I was really glad that it happened.
Yeah, absolutely. Luckily, Mastery Chat tends to bring that out in people, but I think your questions also helped a ton. So I think you did a great job moderating and creating that culture for the chat tonight. And I think right now is I think that's important that you highlight that, right? Right now is probably more important to both be vulnerable, be willing to take risks, be willing to fail beautifully, right? Like if you're gonna fail and try something you've never tried before, this is definitely the year to do it. Not only because there are like actual legitimate reasons, because many states aren't going to be counting any scores against teachers. There's sort of like this giant amount of grace. I want to be careful with this because it's not universally true, but there's a lot of grace right now in terms of like teachers trying things to get the plane off the ground, so to speak. So I really love the fact that you highlighted that in the chat tonight, because being vulnerable right now, asking for help, leaning on the community and each other, I think this is how we get through it. I mean, the truth is, I don't know if you remember March of 2020, this past year, but like we literally had to redesign our entire delivery model for instruction in 72 hours, like as an entire educational system. And every single teacher was like, hold my Starbucks, right? Like every single one was just like, I got this. And it might not be the prettiest or the most beautiful instruction we've ever done. It might not be the most impactful instruction we've ever done, but we made it work, darn it. Like we made it work. The US educational system did not collapse. Kids kept learning, that they kept on getting fed because cafeteria workers worked tirelessly to make sure that happened. So I think it shows how resilient and strong the educational system and the core group of educators and teachers and staff at schools across the country actually are, to keep this going in the craziest a situation we can probably imagine. And a lot of our users think that you are just the best, Erin, just so you know.
Yeah, I feel like, and I've been thinking about this all summer, is just the cycle was broken in March, and teachers rose to the challenge. And I hope that the community, everybody in the country really takes that to change the cycle. We shouldn't go back to the old routines, to the old habits. We should use to bring some new in. But we're not going to do that unless we have new teachers sticking through this and staying in the profession despite all these challenges. Like, we're not going to be able to make that change if we don't have anyone coming up to support that, to bring that new faces into the classroom. And I feel like for these new teachers this year who are thrown into this as their very first experience in the classroom, it must be so hard. And just knowing that if we can get the whole community, non-educators, family members, community members, to support teachers in this moment and push that forward, is going to show a huge boost of support to anyone who's looking to become a teacher ever. And hopefully that will create some of this new innovation in our cycle.
And how much, and to your point, how much more valuable has the new teacher that just learned all these new skills and software and technology and everything else, coming into a school that may not have these skills, or coming into a position, how much more valuable does their input now become in this new world of education all of a sudden, right? So if you're a brand new teacher and you just learned how to completely navigate the 21st century of education, and you're up to date on all of the newest tools and resources, you may not have the experience that a 10-year or 15-year veteran or 20-year veteran does. However, you do have a skill set that they may or may not have, depending on their training and things like that. So I think that also changed the conversation of like, who was prepared for this? And some of the younger teachers that are just coming in, who would normally never be looked to for guidance, are now showing people how to sign on to a Zoom and things like that.
Yeah, and I just hope that all new teachers can take that confidence and project that into their school communities, because sometimes you get into a new place and you especially if you don't know anyone, if you're teaching from home and you haven't met any of your colleagues, or you're doing hybrid, or everyone's isolated in their class, you don't know that you have a voice. You don't take advantage of it and share it in the community. And even as people were saying in the chat, like, just listen, just ask. If people feel like they have a space to share these ideas, they're more likely to share them in their school community and bring everybody up, not just one classroom.
Absolutely. So one of the last questions I want to talk about, and then I'll let you get on with your evening in beautiful Rhode Island. It was beautiful when I visited there, by the way. It was one of my favorite places to travel that I've gotten to travel across the United States. However, you talked about work-life balance and sort of establishing healthy routines. I think this is probably more important right now than almost anything, One of my favorite quotes came from another one of these mastery chats from a random college student who was helping moderate from a group of other college students. And I don't even know his name, so I apologize to this individual, whoever you are, wherever you are right now. But he said, Superman doesn't, I don't even think he realized how cool the statement he made was. So I'm just going to coin it right now. But he said, Superman doesn't exist without Clark Kent. Spider-Man doesn't exist without Peter Parker. So even if you're a hero, even if you're like this amazing teacher, if you're not taking care of your alter ego or your personal self, the hero version of yourself ceases to exist, right? So we need to take care of those alter egos. We need to take care of the other side of our lives, because if we don't, we're going to be burning the candle at both ends, and there's going to be nothing left to give to our learners. I mean, I know personally, and I believe you enjoy this too. Like I do running and exercise a lot, just to like give myself that mental time and that free space where it's just me and my running shoes in the morning at 4 a.m. or whatever it is, whenever you end up getting to do that. Like that's how I help stay sane, right? Setting up boundaries and things like that. Because the other truth, and I'm going to let you kind of expand on this a bit in a moment. The other truth is that remote learning in any form can be a 24-hour job if you don't monitor it, if you don't let it, if you don't set those boundaries. It can very easily become 24 hours a day.
Yeah, someone in the chat tonight talked about how it's not a balance, it's a blend. And I really
I believe that was Livia Chan, actually.
yeah, I really related to that because I don't want there to be a separation about something I'm passionate about and my job, which I'm passionate about. Like I am a passionate educator, so I want to be doing education stuff as like my personal free time, right? So I like the idea of setting healthy boundaries, but also like allowing yourself to find your passion areas and go explore them.
Right.
Yeah, but something that I've seen that has helped me, and when I was doing distance teaching and in this hybrid format, was like utilizing my technology to its fullest extent. Everyone uses Remind for communication, and Remind has these cool out of office hour slots, so it won't send notifications to my phone when I don't want it to. Google Calendar, you can set up appointment slots instead of just having your kids contact you at all times of the day. Somebody in the chat said they have their out of office hours on their email signature, which I love because it's saying like, I am proud that I am taking time for myself and I'm going to make sure that everybody knows that. And I think that's just great. Be really proactive with your communication with your families and with your stakeholders. Setting alarms on your phone, like this is when my phone shuts off for all notifications, and I'm just going to take some time to be present with my family, with my friends, etc.
Yeah.
Back when we could hang out with friends, and then making sure that you are building a structure which allows you to do the things that give you joy and keep you healthy and keep you sane. I mentioned that I had done my very first 5 a.m. run this morning, which was just ironic timing. But yeah, no, building a schedule around what fits in the things that make you happy is really important.
Yeah.
Allowing yourself, like giving yourself permission to do so. It's crucial. And
yes,
set our bars too high as teachers to make sure that we're always at our best level, and we can't be unless we're our best for ourselves and then for our students. So
yes, absolutely, 100%. I'm just gonna applaud you thoroughly for that. So Livia Chan, the amazing individual she is, who shared that original quote, said it was Lindsay Titus who first kind of coined the blend phrase. Jeff Gargis, a near and dear friend of mine. Yes, Lindsay's fantastic. Lindsay's absolutely amazing as well. Jeff Gargis, my dear friend and colleague, he likes to use the term harmony, which kind of says the same thing. And one of the things we talk about a lot is that you can work on the weekends, but plan to work on the weekends. Don't let the work plan for you, right? Like plan to do the work, but don't let work plan your days for you, right? Especially on a Saturday or a Sunday. So what I often tell people is, if you're one of those people who loves what you do and you're passionate about it, then you working helps make you happy. And maybe getting ahead for the week is going to make you a better teacher and less stressed throughout the week. So whether it's Friday night, which probably won't be because most of us are just trying to just recuperate at all, but whether it's, sometime during Saturday or maybe Sunday morning. I used to like to do Sunday mornings just because I could like knock it out and then have the rest of the day to like decompress before I went back into school, or whatever that ends up being for you. Plan that time, that 2 hour slot or 3 hour slot where like, I'm going to get ready for the week in this time, but I'm planning to do it. I made the choice to do this work, and then I'm turning it off again outside of that time. So now you're basically giving, like you said, you're giving yourself permission to do the off work and to turn things off, but you can also give yourself permission to turn things on. But you're the one making the choice, and that's going to help reduce your stress. Because then one thing I'm horrible at is, or I used to be much worse at it, is like literally letting every email I get my attention, or every ding or ping or phone call, and it was horrible because I was literally working or thinking and going 24 hours a day. Whereas now I've really tried to like purposely go, well, I'm going to focus on this for this amount of time, and then I'm not going to focus on it because I can focus on my family, my kids, and other aspects of my life. And so absolutely, I 1,000%, I'm with you. I missed talking to you. This has been fun. So reflecting on the entire chat, I'm not going to keep you here forever. What would be one final thought that you'd have for the audience as they kind of either are watching this tomorrow morning or kind of going to bed tonight as they kind of try to recoup and get ready to tackle Friday before the weekend?
Yeah, I would say the biggest takeaway is the importance of community, especially this week with life and everything going on. Just remembering that we are all humans. We need to take care of ourselves. We need to take care of others. We need to reach out. We need to listen. We need to be there for support when we can, when we feel like we can do that. We need to allow others to support us when they feel like they can do that. Trying to keep your community bonds strong with the other humans that surround you on a daily basis, whether that's your family, your friends, your colleagues, your students, and just we are people first. We need to keep that community strong, and we've got this.
All right, we got this. You heard it from the horse's mouth, I guess, is how I would say that. So thank you guys so much for spending your time with us, whether you're watching it live or in the replay. Doesn't really matter. It's going to be just as awesome either way. But thank you guys so much for joining us. And Erin, thank you so much for an amazing mastery chat tonight. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much.